And yes, the County Senior Football Championship quarter-final action continues this afternoon with 2 games down for decision, and there's one big one tomorrow as well in Fraher Field. And to preview the remaining 3 quarter-finals, delighted to welcome into studio now former Wexford manager and former Daisha footballer, that is Jason Ryan, to look ahead to the action. We'll start this afternoon, Jason, in Welch Park. 2019 county champions Rathgormack entertain Kilmac Thomas. 2:30 throw-in for that one. Rathgormack had a facile 25-point win over Ardmore last weekend, and Kilmac Thomas suffered a 22-point defeat against the Nair. So I suppose Rathgormack will enter this one as strong favourites.
They will, but I suppose on any given day, the way the weather is going, conditions and different things like that, it can be a leveller somewhat. But it's very hard to see Kilmac being able to make up the deficit that's being kind of shown. But look, they'll fight hard. They'll certainly, everybody has a good idea of the strengths of Rathgormack. Who are the key players, what are they going to do, and how they're going to play. There's been a consistent team picked over the last number of years with a few little tweaks here and there. They're very, very strong on the ball, excellent runners. Any possession that you lose in your own half, they're brilliant at counter-attacking, and they'll do serious damage. So very fit and well organised by Gerard Power. Look, Kilmac need to maximise all the possession that they have. They have to keep the ball when they have it, and it sounds very basic, but if they can keep the ball when they have it, and when they don't have it, if they can work like dogs and do all they can to get as many turnovers as they possibly can. But that's a game that the first quarter is going to be key. Really keeping it tight in Kilmac's case. But I'd imagine Rathgormack will be doing the opposite. They'll be thinking, right, really go at these fellas at the very start and let's try to create some sort of a gap. Whether Kilmac want to acknowledge it or not, there will be, after the Nair game, there's going to be the start of this match is going to be key, in that after the previous match you've doubts about how you're playing and what you're doing and who you're playing against. But it's amazing what 5 or 10 minutes, really good 5 or 10 good minutes at the start of a game, what that can do for confidence.
Absolutely. And Rathgormack was put Ardmore to the sword early last week, and even though they are still without Billy Power, and I suppose a couple of guys went off with niggles, but Ronan Elliff seems to be a revelation up front. He's got 4 goals in 2 games. Stevie Curry and Conor Murray was still pulling the strings there at centre forward. So all these guys, great footballers and great finishers.
They are, and they know what it takes over the last number of years. It's nearly a case of for a number of years these are young guys coming through, and they were trying to push the Strabalys, the Nairs, the Ballynacourties, but all of a sudden now these are the players that they're 3 matches, 3 wins away from being county champions again. And I don't think there's a danger of them taking Kilmac for granted, and I think the weather will kind of lead to that as well. The fact that the pitch is going to be heavy, and when you're taking that into account, and we've quite a bit of wind over the last few days, that these extra little kind of conditions, they help to focus on what needs to actually be done.
Absolutely. So Rathgormack getting a strong vote there, so Jason.
Yes, and look, it's nothing against all the work that's been done by Kilmac and by Benji Whelan with the guys over the last number of years, but just at the moment Rathgormack are in a very strong position. Very
good. That's at 2:30 in Welch Park, and then later this evening in Fraher Field, under the Fraher Field floodlights, it's an all-Western affair as defending champions Ballynacourty do battle with Kilrossenty. So I suppose 2 real powerhouses and 2 traditional football clubs who usually bring about the best in one another, Jason, and this one will be eagerly awaited, although some would say the glosses may be taken off it. The fact Kilrossenty are going to be -2 of their key players in Martin Dunn and Stevie Prendergast, who of course received straight red cards against Galtier. So does that make their task a little bit more difficult?
It does. 2 of them playing straight down the middle. Stephen played fullback, and Martin playing either midfield or centre forward, so it's a big loss not having those playing. They're big, strong guys with a lot of experience. Stephen has been playing for the Kilrossenty senior team for so long at this stage, and Martin, I know, has moved into the area or transferred into the club, but he's been a valuable player to them over the last number of years. So it's difficult. But look, one thing that you're going to have with the Kilrossenty team is you're going to have a group of players that know each other very, very well. If they can play direct ball into their forwards, if Tommy Prendergast can get on enough ball, if he's a great fielder, ball carrier, he's able to score, but it's how much attention are Ballynacourty going to give him. And it can be, when you're playing in midfield, sometimes you can sacrifice your own game to nullify somebody, or you can go off and play your own game. And if Tommy's allowed to go off and play his own game, he can do some serious damage. But they'll be I think that it's going to be important that For Kilrossenty, if they allow Ballynacorty to build up any level of momentum at all, it's going to be difficult for them. They have to keep it. I know it's like a repeat of what I'm saying about Kilmac, but Kilrossenty have to keep the start of the game very, very tight. They need to make sure that any opportunities that come their way, whether it be through frees or if they create any goal scoring chances, that they're maximising it. That Ballynacorty are on. They're on a roll. I suppose they've had from winning our unusual finish to the championship last year and have been finished in this calendar year, and then they've had a positive senior hurling championship with Abbey's side, where they'll be quite happy with the progress that they made in certain games and how they've come on. So now coming into football, they are. They want to hold on to their title. They'll be looking over their shoulders at the performances of the Nair and the performances of Rathcormac, and knowing that they're going to have to be very, very efficient in how they play in this one.
And on the back, of course, of that 8-5 win over Stradbally last weekend, which psychologically, of course, I suppose Ballynacorty beating Stradbally is always big, especially the manner of the victory. Conditions were awful on the night, so they'll be entering this one full of confidence.
Yeah, and it was a Stradbally team that has been playing quite well, and that have been there's a lease of life there with them, with Brick in charge of them and how they're playing, and they've really some strong players that haven't been playing as much necessarily over the last number of years. So that was a big win for Ballynacorty.
It certainly was, and I suppose you have two of the elder statesmen still pulling the strings, the likes of Mark Ferncoman and Pudge Herney still going strong up front. I suppose if they're given that quality ball, I was mentioning it to Tony Gray, whom we had on the show last weekend, they're well capable of finishing, Jason, but not alone that. The injection of youth Corty have brought into their squad as well has been very evident. Yeah,
look, the game of football, it's so athletic now that if you have players that have legs and that can cover ground and comfortable on the ball, it's a massive advantage. You're able to create an overlap, or you're able to, a gap opens up, you're able to attack it and really go at it. And when teams are mobile like that, they're either going to score or they're going to get fouled. So it's win-win for the attacking team. But when you have players like Mark Ferncombe and Pudge Herney, it's a lot of it is it's belief that when they have the ball that they can make something happen, and a lot of that kind of comes with experience, the confidence that if I have the ball, if I kick one or two wide, it's alright, because the third one I'll stick over the bar. And they have that confidence that comes with time, and that comes with being in that situation so many times before.
Absolutely. So Lar Herney's side getting the vote to be in the semis, Jason?
Yeah, look, I think they have to get the vote. I think missing the two players of suspension is just it's a big, massive blow for Kilrossenty.
Yeah, well, no doubt they will give it everything. I'm sure there's plenty of motivation for Darren Mulhern and the Kilrossenty lads if they're tuned in. Sunday afternoon then, all roads leading back to Fraher Field, and it's the big game of the weekend. We went in order of games, of course, maybe, but this is the standout one, as the Nair and Stradbally are set to renew their long-standing rivalry in the quarter-finals. 2:00 throw-in for that one. The Nair hugely impressive against Kilmac Thomas last weekend. Of course, they received a walkover from Bricky Rangers in round 1. Stradbally lost 8-5 to Ballynacorty, but scored a big win over on Ryan in round 1. The Nair, a lot of people say, Jason, will be going in as strong favourites, but I suppose as well, once you have Stradbally bet, you have a lot of work done.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. That they both know each other so well, and they will prepare for each team to do their best, to play the best that they can, but also to nullify what the opposition can actually bring to the table. That really tough game against Ballynacorty, that will stand to the Stradbally guys. It really will. So you have that championship intensity game, then on top of that you have the weather conditions, and the Stradbally team over the last 15 years or 20 years, very often they've won championship matches in low scoring games. It's nearly like a rite of passage, or it's nearly like a case of they don't seem to bother or care really how much they win the game by or how little they score, as long as they win the game. So they will be ready to fight for every single ball, and they will be ready to get bodies in to where it hurts and where it matters. But what will be really interesting is, from a Nair point of view, how they adapt. How is the weather going to affect things? Can they deliver quality kick passes into a dangerous forward line? Can they have runners coming from deep? And like when you want to have repeated runners going in a game and the ground is very, very heavy, it takes an awful lot out of the legs. It's very hard to sustain it. So it's going to be a really interesting game. Very difficult one to call now, Gavin. The Nair would have to go into its favourites on how they've been playing over the last few weeks. But it's a tough game to call.
It certainly is indeed. And the Niall, of course, looking really sharp last weekend, and plenty of youth. And as you say, those runners driving through, Aaron Ryan even and Tom Byrne, 2 youngsters, and you've the Gyree clan, I suppose, still going strong, and Conor Gleeson, arguably one of the top forwards in the county as well. But as you say, Stradley will have their homework done as well, and they'll be, I suppose, aiming to keep themselves in the game for as long as they can. Yeah,
and like it's taken into account the game's on in Fairfield. Wind is going to be blowing. Is it going to be a game of two halves? And all of a sudden then it's not only about how the players play on the field, it's also what the management team do regarding how they set up tactically to reduce the impact of the wind, or alternatively how they're going to set up to maximise the wind. Like that, if you're playing against that wind, how are you going to set up to reduce space for runners to come into, or how are you going to be able to set up to reduce ball being kicked into certain spaces, and then when the chances do present with the wind, maximising those. So even from the very start of that, Gavin, the decision as to are we going to play with the wind or against the wind, like before the game starts, that's going to be a massive decision as to what you're actually going to do, because it impacts everything. It impacts your kickouts, it impacts how you defend, it impacts how you attack, it impacts how you actually select your team, because some days with the wind as strong as it can be in Fairfield, you may have a totally different team in one half compared to the other because of the conditions.
Absolutely, and it promises to be intriguing at 2:00 in Fairfield Sunday afternoon. Who are you going to give the vote to, Jason, on this one? If I put the gun to your head, as they say.
I think on form, if the gun is to my head, I think that the Niall have that little bit, but I would not in any way be writing off. It's a dangerous thing to write off those guys from Stradbally. So if the game is very tight going to the very end, towards the end, it could be anybody's. And with the weather again, I know I'm going on about the weather an awful lot, but like a goal here, a goal there, a few goals conceded are going to drain a team. A goal scored, all of a sudden, it just gives you a huge, massive lift. So could be a an
could go to extra time.
It could do. So wrap up well. Anybody going to that game, be well wrapped up. You could be there for a while.
Absolutely, that will be intriguing, and we'll have updates across the weekend here in WLR, both on air and online. Just a quick word on the relegation semi-finals, Jason, also taking place this weekend, 2:30 p.m. on Saturday in Cappoquin, Ardmore and Bricky Rangers in an all-Western affair, and then at 12 noon in Kilmac on Sunday. It's on Ryan against St Saviour's. I know the losers will have, I suppose, another chance, a final bite of the cherry to try and retain their senior status. So I suppose they're games nobody wants to be involved in.
No, nobody wants to be involved in them. Incredibly hard to call. You don't know what teams are coming into it and how things have been going, because as you start winning games in a championship and go further, momentum is with you and there's a huge amount of positivity. But when it's going the opposite way, you just don't know what's going on, and it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen in those games. But the importance of getting the basics right, playing with a huge amount of desire and heart, and an awful lot of togetherness, and it'll be difficult because there's a different. The pressure to win is one thing, but the pressure not to lose is totally different. It's challenging, Gavin. So the mindset of the players going into those games this week is so important. And in fairness, a number of those teams have been senior for a long time, and being out of the senior ranks, it'll be very, very hard to take for them.
Certainly will. And Ardmore, of course, they've already lost their hurling status. They won't want to go down in the football, as you say. It's going to be tight, and the two losers will play off then the following weekend, and games coming thick and fast as well. And as you say, once you're not on that winning momentum as well, it's hard to get going to the field Tuesday nights and Thursday nights and things like that, isn't it?
And then if you've any other bad luck with injuries, the way the championship is, there's an awful lot of merits in having one code played and then a following one. There's an awful lot of merit for players want to play games, so let them play games week on week. But when it goes against you, it doesn't give you much time to get momentum back again. And when an injury goes against you, you've no time to come back. If you're injured, you're just gone. You're out, and it can be very difficult. But look, that's the joys of sport. It'll be the teams that win at the weekend in those relegation games. It'll be like they're after getting to a county final. You have your bit of, it's a different type of celebration, but it's nearly like a huge relief and a weight off your shoulders, when you do get that victory. Yeah, ending the year on a high. We'll be keeping an eye on those games as well. And just before we let you go, Jason, maybe interesting to get your views on the GA Special Congress last weekend, and Proposal B, I suppose, failing to get over the line, or not receiving, I suppose, fell well short of the 60% majority. A lot of written and spoken about it since. I suppose maybe just what was your reaction to it? My reaction wasn't one of surprise.
Okay.
We're we're a conservative nation, and then we have the GA is a big part of our communities, and the GA is a conservative organisation. I'm not convinced it was the best proposal. Okay, was it a proposal that could have worked? Yeah, absolutely, and I see an awful lot of merit in it. But I do believe that there needs to be more thought put as to how to schedule the games and how teams would figure. I genuinely would have felt very hard done by if I was a team in Division 1 and was that bit further down, and all of a sudden a team in a lower division was in a championship, that even though they'd won their games, but it could be a number of divisions lower down, and that they're in the championship at the latter stages when my team mightn't be. So look, there was a number of different things like that I would have thought, right, that needs to be teased out that little bit more, and there's no doubt it needs to be given time to look at, well, what's going to be best. Because if you're from a hurling perspective or from a hurling football perspective, like there's huge gaps between where teams stand at the moment. So the standard of hurling that's being played by the top teams compared to the teams 20 positions down in the country, like it's chalk and cheese. And it's actually, those gaps, while they're not as big in football, they are there, and they're bigger than you think. And yes, by the weaker teams playing the stronger teams, certainly when I was playing, it was an experience that I wanted to have, and I certainly enjoyed the idea of going out to play against Cork or Kerry in the Munster Championship. And no matter what level that we play at, there is going to be some hammerings. You have professional sport where you have teams that are allegedly at the same level, whether it's in rugby or whether it's in soccer, and there is hammerings of teams in exactly the same division. But then 3 months later, it might not go the other way around, but there might be a loss or it might be a draw or whatever it might be. So like, they're things that are just going to happen. I don't think there's any system that is going to be introduced that's going to take away that there's never going to be a drubbing again, and that every game we play is actually going to go down to the last 5 minutes to actually get a winner. So look, it's not over. There's going to be a lot more debate about it, and you can be sure that over the next couple of years there's going to be more and more and more proposals that are going to be brought to the table. But for the person that's coming from Tyrone, and if they're a football person, their proposals are absolutely totally different and maybe have no relevance to somebody that's from Leitrim from a football perspective. And then from a person from Waterford from a football perspective, it's totally different as well, because you've some teams in certain divisions, for example, Leitrim are playing in Division 3, but Leitrim played in Division 3 this season, but Leitrim is football predominantly, but there's teams that are in Division 3 that are dual counties, and that they play equal hurling and football, or that there's not an awful lot between hurling and football in the county. There might be predominantly one or the other. So like there's just an awful lot of inequalities that are actually there, and it's very unlikely that we're going to come up with any one mix or proposal that's going to make everybody happy. But for sure, change has to happen. But it's more exploration of the best changes, I think, is needed.
I think that's a fair enough assessment, and plenty of food for thought there. Jason Ryan, really appreciate you dropping in, and enjoy the rest of the action over the weekend.
Thanks, Gavin. Thank you very much.